As you know, on Friday, the province announced that we'll be moving into step 3 of the roadmap to reopen, and that will take place on Friday, July 16th at 12:01 a.m. So this is because we continue to see improvements in key indicators that allow the province to safely expand indoor settings and capacity limits. So step 3 of the roadmap focuses on the resumption of additional indoor services with larger numbers of people, and various restrictions will remain in place. I'll give you just a few examples of what has changed. It's not exhaustive, but it'll give you a good sense of what things will change as of Friday. Outdoor social gatherings and organized public events with up to 100 people will be permissible with limited exceptions. Indoor social gatherings and organized public events with up to 25 people. There will be indoor religious services, rites, or ceremonies, so that will include weddings, funerals. They'll be permitted with physical distancing. Indoor dining will be permitted with no limits on the number of patrons per table, of course with physical distancing and other restrictions still in effect. We'll see changes related to indoor sports and recreational fitness facilities. They will open subject to a maximum 50% capacity of that indoor space. There will also be changes to indoor meeting and event spaces permitted to operate with physical distancing and other restrictions that are still in effect, with capacity limited to not exceed 50% or 1,000 people. We'll see essential and non-essential retail with capacity limited to the number of people that can maintain the physical distance of 2 meters. We shall see personal care services, including those that require the removal of a face covering. And again, that will be permissible with physical distancing of 2 meters and capacity limits. We'll also see museums, galleries, historic sites, etc. They'll be able to open with limited capacity to not exceed 50% for indoors and 70% for outdoors. And we'll see some changes related to the opening of cinemas, concert venues, and theaters, again with those restrictions. So the good news on this, in addition to opening up, is that often the province doesn't provide us with the regulation at the same time as they do the announcement. So we play a little bit of catch up, and sometimes they're conflicting. But fortunately for this one, they have already released OREG 36420 to implement the roadmap. So we'll be able to review that in great detail and get more information out very, very soon. Face coverings in indoor public settings and physical distancing requirements are going to remain in place throughout step 3. And we will require face coverings in some outdoor public settings as well. Similar to step 2 and step 1, the province is intending to remain in this step of the roadmap for at least 21 days. And in this case, until 80% of the eligible population that's aged 12 or over has received 1 dose of the vaccine, and when 75% have received their 2nd dose. There will still be some restrictions in place. As I mentioned, there's the physical distancing and the mask wearing. There will also be the requirement for passive screening, and that businesses still have a safety plan. An announcement was also made today from the federal government. They launched their Tourism Relief Fund. So that was through the Minister of Economic Development and Official Languages. It's a $500 million in funding for the new Tourism Relief Fund, and eligible organizations can submit applications to support the tourism sector. And that's to prepare to welcome back domestic travelers and reposition Canada as a world-class destination. And so more will come on that front. So lots of changes. So I'll talk a little bit about how that impacts us here in Niagara-on-the-Lake. First, the community center will be able to reopen its doors beginning at 8 a.m. on Friday, and that will allow for public use of the fitness area. Rentals and bookings will not quite be available yet. However, plans are underway to consider how to safely allow their resumption, and more information will follow very soon. While the town senior management staff is exploring options to prepare for the safe reopening of Town Hall, the town administrative buildings will remain closed to the public, but staff will remain available to serve the public online, over the phone, with arranged curbside pickup, or by appointment. and we will have a phased reopening plan shortly for the administrative buildings. The water features remain open, so Memorial Park, St. David's Pool, the wading pool, and the splash pad all remain open. And as it has been for quite some time, the public washrooms at Memorial Park on Market Street, Simcoe Park, Queens Royal Park, and Burgess Sports Park also remain open the 7 days a week from 8 to 8, with regular cleaning and disinfection still in place. And now council members may be wondering about in-person council meetings and when we intend to resume that activity. With the pending move into step 3, the emergency control group has begun to discuss this. But we want to prepare some options and some phasing and bring that back to council for consideration. So when we bring it back, we'll consider the provincial regulations and public health guidance, how we might achieve those requirements in the council chambers, because of course we need to have physical distancing. If there's any costs, so if we are, say we're proposing bringing everyone back, then initially we would probably need to see some barriers. So you would want to know what that looks like, what that costs. And of course, we need to consider the efficacy of the meetings. Some municipalities are looking at a hybrid model where some council members are working from home, whereas others are coming in. So we want to think about how well that will work for council members and the public. So we'll report back shortly on that. In regard to the ambassador program, so it was just this past weekend, starting on Friday, that the town's very gracious and dedicated volunteer ambassadors, they hit the streets of Old Town to once again welcome our visitors, answer questions, and provide friendly reminders about our COVID-19 protocols. So we saw our volunteers out on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday from noon until 4. And they will continue with this schedule for the remainder of the summer, of course, weather permitting. So great big thank you to the Shaw Guild for heading up this great ambassador initiative to serve the residents and guests of Niagara-on-the-Lake so well again this season. I see Councillor Burrows applauding. I agree. They deserve a great big applause for their efforts. So looking at vaccinations now, there are 2 additional clinics in Niagara-on-the-Lake that will take place on July 21st and July 22nd. Effective today, Niagara Region's website is reporting that we've had about 540,000 doses administered to Niagara residents. And so since my last update, that's over 100,000 more. So you can see it's really ramping up in terms of this getting vaccines in arms. That represents 67.5% of Niagara residents who've had their first dose. And we've also seen 45.3% of Niagara residents have a complete series, so both doses. So good news on the vaccine fronts. From a traffic perspective, we actually saw a decrease this weekend over last weekend, probably due to inclement weather that we experienced on Sunday. But this weekend we had 11,594 cars incoming versus last weekend we had just over 15,000 incoming cars. So that's about a 23% decrease over last weekend. Regarding bylaw enforcement, our weekend bylaw staff were down to just 2 officers this weekend. However, good news on that front, we are making some progress in regards to the hiring of additional bylaw officers that were previously approved by council. So soon we'll have more on board. Saturday had great weather and Old Town was very busy. And despite the rain on Sunday, Old Town still remained busy. We saw our bylaw officers issue 116 parking tickets. And in addition to parking, the officers were focused on ensuring public health guidance and provincial regulations were adhered to, as well as addressing STR complaints. So bylaw staff went out and visited the Outlet Mall again last week, and they inspected the special event area of Simply Niagara. And that layout met the physical distancing requirements and all the safety requirements. So off to a good start on that front. The town did receive a few complaints from visitors that felt there should be more people allowed in stores to minimize the lineups and the wait times. However, as you know, it's important that we still meet the capacity requirements and physical distancing requirements. So bylaw enforcement was focused on that. Uh, Also, bylaw visited the downtown area and the patios. And so far, operators and visitors seem to be doing a good job in that regard. With the short-term rentals now open again, we are seeing an increased complaint about short-term rentals, as you could expect. And we know that on Saturday, bylaw staff responded to a call and did find an illegally operating STR, so are investigating and going to address that matter. Generally, this week, they've been busy educating residents and visitors of the current regs. Large number of inquiries about the regulations. Each time we move into a new step, of course, that's what happens, and staff do their very best to research as quickly as they can and interpret the regs so that they can provide good, solid advice. And on to good news. So we had our Strawberry Social on June the 28th. While that's typically enjoyed in person, this year's event invited our local seniors to receive a box of treats via drive-through format at the community center, or they could have delivery right to their home. So this year we saw almost 600 senior citizens, and that included all of the residents of all local long-term care homes. They got a box of yummy treats that included a homemade scone, butter tarts, jam, whipped butter, tea, and of course the local strawberries that were donated by Seaway Gardens. We received so many positive notes and emails and phone calls about that. Great response. So feel very happy to have had a successful event despite the changed format. And we're happy to be able to acknowledge our senior population in that way as very valuable contributing members to NODL. We also saw the conclusion of our STEP challenge at the end of June. So we had 178 participants, and they walked together over 50 million steps. So our grand prize winners were, for the individual category, someone known as Naughty Woman. And then for the team, it was known as Finally Feeling Fine with the PF for Pfizer. So we hope to see everyone back next year for another challenge. We also launched our Honk Mobile on Monday, July 5th. So since its launch just a week ago, there have been 1,300 pay for parking transactions using Honk Mobile with more than $11,000 in revenue. So this new way to pay for parking, it's quick and it's safe, and it helps drivers to avoid the high touch areas like pay stations and cash, which is also something not only convenient, but helps with preventing the spread of COVID. It can be accessed via an app or using the Honk tap stations that are located throughout NODL's Heritage District. Now, we still have the metered parking machines, and they will continue to be available at this time. So motorists can choose to pay for parking via the Honk Mobile or through the standard provided through a nearby parking meter. And so I'll just remind everyone that if they want more information on this new program, they can visit our website at nodl.com/Honk Mobile. Lots of good information on the program there. And we have a park hop that we're planning for this summer. And so they're working hard to present a safe, fun, and kid-friendly summer activity. It involves our local parks and our playgrounds, a scavenger hunt, animals in hiding, and a great grand prize. So just encouraging people to get outside while physically distancing still helps with mental health. And just stay tuned because we'll have more details for you on that on Tuesday, July the 20th.